May 9th, 1971. 6:41 p.m., Harlem. Frank Lucas saw the first patrol car before he heard the siren, because the officer wasn't looking for a traffic stop. He was looking at Frank. 3 blocks later, the street turned into a trap, and the question wasn't whether Frank would get cuffed. It was whether Harlem would watch him fall or watch him become untouchable. Frank was driving a dark green 1969 Cadillac DeVille. He was coming off Lenox Avenue near 125th Street, the hour when storefronts were half closing and the street was half opening. Frank's right hand rested low on the steering wheel. The ring on his finger caught the light when he turned. He didn't look like a man running from anything. He looked like a man arriving. Then the first unit slid into view at the next intersection. A marked NYPD cruiser, white and blue, angled just wrong, nose out like it was already committed to stepping into his lane. It wasn't parked. It was waiting. Frank's eyes flicked once, quick as a blink, to the rearview mirror. An unmarked car sat 2 lengths behind him. Dorksidan. No roof light. 2 men in the front. The driver's face stayed forward, but the passenger's head tilted slightly, like he was counting. Frank didn't hit the gas. He didn't slam the brakes. He did what men like him learned to do early. He made the moment give away its secrets. The cruiser at the corner didn't move to stop anyone else. Only him. He rolled through, steady at 25. The unmarked stayed with him. A second cruiser appeared ahead, half a block up, idling by a fire hydrant, its front wheels already turned. A third sat sideways at Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Boulevard, the old-timers still calling it 7th Avenue out of habit and respect. That one had its headlights on even though the sun wasn't fully down yet. Bright white glare aimed straight at the oncoming lane like a threat you could see. Frank exhaled through his nose. Calm, almost bored. An envelope on the seat, the edges of folded paper pressed against the tape as the Cadillac hit a small bump. It made a soft slap against leather. Frank didn't glance at it. He knew exactly what it was. At 6:43, his dash clock ticked over, and the first siren cut loose. 1 siren is noise. 2 is a message. 3 is a decision somebody already made. He heard at least 3. The unmarked car behind him lit up a hidden grill light, a quick flicker of blue that made pedestrians turn their heads. The cruiser at the corner rolled forward, not fast, not dramatic, just enough to say, "You're not driving through Harlem anymore. You're driving through our plan." Frank had been stopped before. He'd been searched before. He'd been asked questions that weren't really questions. But this was different. This was a box, a coordinated box. He could feel the city's attention shift, like a crowd leaning in before a punch lands. The radio in the Cadillac was off. Frank preferred silence in moments like this. Silence gave him room to think. He approached the next light at 126th Street. It was green, but a patrol car lurked on the far side, creeping forward as if it might accidentally block the lane. A uniformed officer stepped out, hand near his holster, shoulders squared. Not casual, not routine. Frank's eyes tracked the man's posture, the angle of his feet, the stiffness in his arms. That officer wasn't just ready to pull him out of the car. He was ready to take something. Frank signaled right, slow, polite, almost insulting, and turned onto a narrower street that ran parallel, cutting the rhythm of the trap by 1 beat. The officer at the far side of the light hesitated. His cruiser didn't follow immediately. That hesitation was a crack. Frank took the crack. He eased down the side street, keeping his speed modest, like a man who believed he still lived in a world where being calm could protect you. But in his mirror, the unmarked sedan made the turn after him, and behind it, a marked cruiser came in wide, tires hissing. Now the sirens got louder. Somewhere on the police band, a dispatcher's voice would be flat and clean. All units, be advised. Vehicle is a green Cadillac DeVille. Proceed with caution. Proceed with caution meant. Don't let him slip. Don't make it messy. Don't miss. Frank took the next corner left, then right again, threading between parked cars and delivery trucks. Harlem streets weren't built for speed. They were built for life, Kids darting out, men crossing without looking, doorways swallowing people whole. Speed here wasn't a flex. It was a gamble. Frank didn't gamble. He calculated. At 6:45, he saw the next move before it happened. A second unmarked car slid up on a cross street, timing itself to appear right as he passed, like a door swinging shut. Frank recognized the shape of it. A plain brown sedan, older model, the kind used by detectives who didn't want you to hear them coming. That meant this wasn't just patrol. This was a squad that had been briefed. This was personal. He glanced once to the right, just once, and saw a man in a suit on the sidewalk near a bodega entrance, standing too still to be a shopper. Not a uniform, not a neighbor. He watched the Cadillac like it was a package being tracked. Frank felt something colder than fear. He felt clarity. They weren't here for a ticket. They weren't even here for an arrest. They were here for the envelope. The first real surge hit him then. Not panic. Pressure. The kind that compresses your options until you're forced to show who you are. He took a turn into a tighter lane where the buildings leaned closer, and the streetlights hadn't fully warmed up. The unmarked sedan behind him followed, but the marked cruiser hesitated, boxed by a double-parked bread truck with silver cup painted on the side. The driver of the truck, a heavy man with a cap pulled low, stared straight ahead like he didn't see a police car in meeting room. Frank's eyes met the truck driver's in a mirror flash. The driver didn't nod, didn't smile, but his hands stayed right where they were, and the truck didn't move. That was Harlem. Sometimes it hated you. Sometimes it held you up for 1 second when you needed it. Frank gained half a block. Half a block was oxygen. The unmarked sedan was still there, though, tighter now, closing the distance like it didn't care about dents or witnesses. Frank could see the passenger's face clearer. White man, mid-30s, jaw clenched, eyes hard. He wasn't looking at the road. He was looking at Frank. Frank's mind ran through his circle in a rapid inventory. Who knew he'd be on Lennox at this hour? Who knew the route? Who knew the envelope existed? At 6:47, the trap tightened. Ahead, at the next major avenue, 2 patrol cars had staged a clean roadblock. One across the lane, one angled to catch a sudden turn. A uniform stood in the middle of the street with his palm out, like he could stop a Cadillac with his hand. Frank slowed, like he might comply, like he might pull over and let them have their show. For a half second, the street held its breath. Then Frank turned the wheel, sharp, controlled, and cut into a narrow service entrance between buildings, the kind you'd miss if you didn't live here, the kind that looked like a dead end to outsiders. The Cadillac's right mirror clipped the brick, scraping paint with a groan. The car squeezed through with inches to spare. The alley opened into a back lot behind a row of storefronts, littered with crates and trash, the ground uneven. The unmarked sedan tried to follow. It couldn't. Its front bumper kissed the brick and stopped, wedged, the driver suddenly realizing the city didn't care about his plan. Frank didn't smile. He just kept moving. For the first time, the sirens fell slightly behind. He shot out of the back lot onto a cross street, tires thumping over a curb cut, the Cadillac suspension groaning like an old man getting up too fast. People shouted. A woman yanked a child back by the collar. A man holding groceries froze, then flung himself against a wall. Frank didn't look at their faces. He looked at the line of open street. His speed hit 40, then 45, too fast for these blocks, fast enough to feel the car's mass fighting physics. The radio in the police cars will be chaos now. He just cut through the service lane. He's heading east. He's on, voices stepping over each other, panic hiding under procedure. Frank took a hard right toward Park Avenue. Not the Manhattan Park Avenue, with doormen and hotels. Harlem's Park Avenue. Steel, shadows, train tracks, the bones of the city. The elevated line above made the street feel narrower, darker, like the ceiling was closing in. At 6:49, he had his first moment of relief. A stretch of road opened up ahead, and for 2 full blocks, there was no cruiser in sight. No siren close enough to sting the ears. Just the rumble of the elevated structure and the Cadillac's engine, steady, loyal. He could vanish. He could park, ditch the car, disappear into a stairwell, become a rumor on a landing. But the envelope on the passenger seat wasn't just paper. It was leverage. It was proof. It was the kind of thing men died for quietly. Frank reached over with his left hand, tapped it once, not tender, not afraid. A reminder. Then the relief shattered. A police cruiser shot across the intersection ahead, hard and sudden, blocking him again, like the city itself had been ordered to close. And behind that cruiser, the suited man appeared again. On the sidewalk, same posture, same stillness, as if he'd moved without moving. Frank's stomach tightened. That wasn't coincidence. That was coordination beyond patrol. Someone had eyes on him that weren't chasing the car. They were anticipating the mind. At 6:50, the truth arrived like a punch you don't see until it lands. The route had been sold. Not guessed. Not spotted. Sold. Frank thought of the last phone call he'd taken before he left. A check-in from someone who sounded too relaxed. A man who asked, casual as weather, "You still coming up Lennox today?" Frank had answered without thinking. Just a word. Yeah, a single word, given away for free. And now 8 patrol cars and 2 unmarked sedans were paying for it with gasoline and confidence. He didn't have time to rage. Rage was slow. He needed a decision. He took it. He drove straight at the roadblock like he hadn't seen it, forcing the uniform in the street to flinch. At the last possible moment, Frank cut left into a delivery bay under the elevated track, a hollow space between metal pillars where trucks loaded in the day and ghosts waited at night. The Cadillac bounced, metal scraping. The undercarriage hit something hard and sparked. Frank felt the impact in his teeth. Then he was in the shadow. For 2 seconds, the car was invisible from the main road. Just 2 seconds. But 2 seconds was a lifetime if you spent it right. Frank stopped. Not a full stop. A dead stop. The kind that makes your heart slam because it feels wrong in the middle of motion. He reached across, grabbed the envelope, and shoved it down between the seat and the console, deep, crushing it into the space like he was hiding a heart. Then he did something that would later become the part people argued about in barbershops for years. He turned the car's headlights off. The world went dim, just the glow from streetlights bleeding through the metal pillars. Outside, Sirens screamed past the delivery bay, rushing to the next intersection where they expected him to appear because that's what most drivers would do. Keep running in the only direction available. Frank didn't run like most drivers. He waited. 7 seconds. 8. 9. He watched the shadow lines on the ground. Watched the flicker of red-blue light sweep the pillars like a lighthouse searching for a ship. Then, at 6:51, he eased forward, slow, controlled, and rolled out of the bay behind the wave of sirens, merging back into the street as if he belonged to the chase instead of being the target. 2 blocks later, he was driving at 25 again. A woman on the sidewalk looked at him, confused, like she'd just watched a man escape a net by becoming part of the net. Frank didn't look back, but the story wasn't done with him, because the suited man hadn't been chasing the Cadillac. He'd been watching for the moment Frank would stop. At 6:53, an unmarked sedan slid into view ahead, easing out from a side street with a patience that felt surgical. No siren, no ruse, just a quiet claim on the lane. Frank's throat went dry. That car wasn't responding to radio panic. That car was following his second plan. The sedan's passenger window lowered halfway, and the man inside didn't wave a badge. He didn't shout. He simply held up a small, dark object for a single beat, something that could have been a camera, could have been a recorder, could have been a file clipped shut. Then the window rose. A message delivered without words. We know what you're carrying. We know where it goes. And we're not here to arrest you the way patrol arrests people. Frank's hands tightened on the wheel until his knuckles went pale. He didn't speed up this time. He turned. He cut into a crowded street where the sidewalks were thick and the intersections were messy, where a quiet, unmarked sedan couldn't bully its way through without being seen. He let the city become his shield. People spilled out of a fish market. A bus hissed to a stop, blocking half the lane. A man with a cart of oranges rolled forward like he owned the asphalt. The unmarked sedan had a slow. And in that slow, Frank's mind made the final connection. The betrayal wasn't just about timing. It was about access. Somebody wanted the envelope because it could burn more than one person. Not just Frank. A name in ink can be louder than a gun. At 6:56, the chase lost its public face. The sirens were far off now, confused, sweeping blocks that no longer mattered. The patrol units were hunting a ghost that had stepped sideways. But the quiet sedan stayed patient, 2 car lengths behind, like a shark that didn't need a sprint. Frank made one last move. Not flashy, not heroic, just cold. He pulled into a row of parked cars near a brownstone entrance, rolled to a stop, and killed the engine. For a second, the world went still. The unmarked sedan slowed, hesitant. It didn't expect him to stop again. Frank stepped out, closing the door softly, like he was arriving home. He adjusted his coat. He looked down the sidewalk and walked, not fast, not slow, into the mouth of a building whose doorway swallowed him. The unmarked sedan passed by, creeping, trying to see through curtains and shadows. It didn't stop. It couldn't, not without drawing eyes, not here, not with witnesses on stoops and kids on steps. The sedan continued on, and Frank Lucas disappeared into Harlem like he'd never been in a car at all. Later, the NYPD would call it a failure. The papers would call it a wild chase. People on 125th would call it something else. Proof. Proof that the city's biggest cage could close around a man and still not hold him. But Frank knew the real aftertaste of that evening wasn't victory. It was the betrayal. Because a net that tight doesn't get woven without someone handing over thread. That night, before midnight, a payphone rang in the back of a small restaurant off Lenox. One of those places where the lights were low and the questions were lower. A man answered, voice cautious. Frank spoke first. Calm. Flat. You stole my route. Silence. Then the man tried to laugh it off, tried to talk like it was business, like it was survivable. Frank didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten with poetry. He just made the world simple. You wanted them to take paper from me, Frank said. Now you're going to bring it back. Every page. Clean. Tonight. A breath on the other end. Fear trying to hide under pride. And if I can't, the man asked. Frank's pause was the most dangerous thing in the call. Then you'll learn what it feels like, Frank said, when the whole neighborhood watches you lose something and nobody steps in. The line clicked dead. In Harlem, reputations weren't built on what you owned. They were built on what couldn't be taken from you. After May 9th, 1971, people stopped saying Frank Lucas was lucky. They started saying he was inevitable. And somewhere inside the NYPD, inside the unmarked cars, inside the quiet offices, inside the people who thought they could buy a route for the price of a favor, someone realized the ugliest part. They didn't just fail to catch him. They taught him exactly who to punish. This story is a dramatized docu-thriller inspired by real names and era, with fictionalized details for storytelling.